of laws, different mitzvot in it, like just there's so much in there, right? You could talk about it all day probably. But I'm just gonna read just a few of them and go over what I about it, how it affects me in a way. But also, I just wanted to before I read a couple of verses, I wanted to just talk about the word Kedoshim. It means holy, right? To be set aside, to be holy, just like as your God is holy. And so, growing up, I always think like holy means like being good, being righteous, following the rules, that kind of thing. And that was being holy, right? And but as I grew up and learned more about that word, it means to be like set apart, to be separated in a way, because there's a lot of different mitzvot that make us holy, that make us separate, but they're not necessarily moral or immoral. There's no like good or bad about them. They're just different, right? Like we, one of the Shabbat, keeping the Shabbat is just different. You're setting aside a time to be separate and be with Hashem, in Hashem's time, and it's not necessarily good or bad. It may be like, maybe if you are a Jew and you're not keeping Shabbat, maybe that might be like a good or bad type of thing because you're going against the Torah. But according to the rest of the world, it's neither good nor bad. It's just a day that you are setting aside. There's other things like we read in there, shatnez. These not wearing wool and linen together. There's no moral implications of that, right? There's if you wear shatnez, you're not like doing something immoral or really bad. But according to the Torah, if you're following the Torah, you're going to do that so that you are part of God's people, and you are Kedoshim, you are holy, right? So here's a couple verses that stick out to me, that stick out to me. I just want to read them real quick. They're in 17 and 18. What chapter is this? Chapter 19, 17, and 18. And when we read every time at the end of Shema, we have it in our Siddur. It says, "You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your fellow, but you shall not bear a sin on his account. You shall neither take revenge from nor bear a grudge against the members of your people. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." So I grouped all these together because, I read these two verses together because in the beginning it says, don't hate your brother. And at the end it says, love your neighbor or love your brother. So you're going to not hate them and you're going to love them. You're going to do both of those things. That's like the positive and the negative commandments that we hear a lot about. So not only are you're going to refrain from hating them, but you are commanded to love them, right? And then it has all these other things about rebuking them and not bearing their sin and not taking revenge and bearing a grudge. And these other things, I feel like since they're sandwiched in between these two other commandments of not hating and loving, that these things are kind of like showing that you're not hating your brother, and you rebuke them because you love them. You don't let them. You don't bear sin for them because you love them. You don't take revenge. You don't bear a grudge. These things. There's many other things that show that you would love your brother and that you won't hate your brother. But these are just a few, right? But I picked this one specifically because oftentimes Tafa, when he's talking to new converts, he says, "What is a commandment? What is a mitzvot that's easy to do for you, and what's one that is harder, that you feel that you have a struggle with or something?" And oftentimes you can't think of anything because you're just like, I don't know, they're all seems like they're wonderful. I want to keep them all, right? but this one really jumped out at me this week, and it was like, you shall surely rebuke your fellow, or you shall rebuke your brother. And I'm like, that it's hard for me, Maybe other people might be easy, Sometimes it comes natural to some people, but to me, I like to like kind of contention, some kind of confrontation, or even like arguments or anything. I run away from that kind of stuff. That's my personality, and I have to constantly like not do that. Sometimes I got to like face the issue, that comes up. But I'd rather just kind of run away from that kind of thing. So so this kind of jumped out at me today, this week, because I was just like, this is a commandment, in the Torah that's telling me to rebuke my fellow if I see them doing something wrong. And that's like so against my natural inclination of running, going away, not wanting to confront that issue, right? And so I was reading different things of how can we rebuke our fellow in a nicer way, in a way that maybe not cause as much confrontation and that kind of thing. And one of the things I shared in the, instead of lowering the person down when you're telling them that they're doing something wrong, like you're doing something wrong, how can you do such a bad thing, instead of saying something like that, you say it in a different way. You say it more like, you're such a good guy. You're such a good, righteous person. How'd you allow this to happen? That kind of thing. So you're kind of uplifting the person. You're uplifting that person that's doing something wrong and saying this sin or this thing that you're doing is beneath you. You shouldn't be even doing that type of thing. So that's kind of one way to try to like rebuke your fellow without trying to put them on the defensive. Another thing I read in the sages, it says you should rebuke your fellow up to 100 times or something like that. But then they went on to explain that it's to rebuke them is to do it and little bits at a time. Just show them, why are you doing that? You shouldn't do that. And you shouldn't do that. You should, the little pieces, just do it nice and slowly and nicely until they finally get it, that kind of thing. What was another one? And also just to, also try to, I guess, put yourselves in their shoes and try to figure out, well, why are they doing this? It might be just the Yetzer Hara that's like, convincing them that they're wrong or doing so. I mean, that their Yetzer Hara is convincing them that everything's okay and I could do this, or they're just giving in to that carnal desire or whatever. But it also might be they think like there's no other way I can do this, such as Shabbat or something. Like maybe, I have to do this on Shabbat. I won't be able to do such and such, or I won't be able to feed my family, some kind of major thing, right? And maybe there might be some reasons. They might have some good reasons, and so to put them in their shoes and to try to figure out, maybe work with them and try to figure out a way to do it to help them to get out of that, that kind of thing. And so so this was one mitzvot that was like really spoke to me, and one that I feel like I kind of have to work on because that's not my natural thing. I mean, I guess I think I could easily like rebuke my children, because they're my children, but like other people, other adults in my age range or even younger than me, it's harder for me to like tell them to rebuke them in a way. So that was one thing. And so I was like thinking to myself, there must be other ones. So go look through the mitzvot and see what other ones that may be a little bit harder or more difficult. And I encourage all of you all to look through the mitzvot, find ones that you think, like Tafa said, find the one that you really like and it's easy for you, and do even more, whatever, and then find the one that's harder for you, and then try to work on that. So that's my message today, and so Shabbat Shalom.